Hey everyone, I'm Madonna and this is David,
Hello.
and we thought we'd talk about the quarrelsome shenanigans going on the planet. What was the two things you said this morning?
Oh, it's just something in so in the Hinduism, the stages of the world are divided up into four ages, and there's a golden age, a silver age, a bronze age, and an iron age, and and they've all got different names. But we're currently in the iron age, and they call it Kali Yuga. Yuga means age, and the description of it is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy.
Mm.
And I was just talking with Madonna about that, and we were joking about it.
We were having a bit of fun thinking that'd be a good topic because it feels like that's going on everywhere. People are being quarrelsome and people are being hypocrites. And and I am to blame as well. I'm fully aware that I'm all in on one side of the fence with a lot of topics. And I don't know what would have to happen for me not to believe the stuff I believe because I've been watching and doing this stuff for 30 years. And I know you feel the same way in your spiritual world. You've been in your
Well,
spiritual world for decades and decades as
but
well.
because of that, I kind of expect it, and I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and
And
same,
also studying philosophy and everything, you end up with a very strong awareness of cognitive bias.
right.
That if I've got a bias, if I believe in something, it's more likely I'll have a bias towards that than something that's on the opposite side.
Yeah, right.
Which,
Well, when we arrived in going back 35 to 40 years ago, we arrived up in Cooktown, North Queensland, because my hubby had a job as a teacher, and at the time we were vegetarian non-drinkers. So we arrived, and they said, "Oh, as long as you like pig shooting um, and fishing, you'll be fine." And we looked at each other and thought, "Crap, what have we done?"
that, that what they'd really call it is pigging and fishing.
Oh, picking and fishing.
Pigging and
Anyway,
fishing.
it was sort of funny, but so and I agree. Because as a vegetarian for 20 years, you're that 5, 10, 15%. You're right. It was getting a lot more popular about 10 years ago. And then if you're not a drinker, that also puts you in another category of people. And then if you're not someone who jumps out and get the most recent jab, you're another group of people. And if you're a natural therapist, there's another group of people. Like, how does it feel being a holistic counselor? Because obviously you've put in a big chunk of energy into your training, but you're not considered within the medical world sort of the same as naturopaths, being a holistic counselor.
Oh no, counseling's a part of allied health, and I don't know. I spend most of my life being in minority groups,
Yeah.
and I'm really used to it. So, and yeah, and our whole family say vegetarian. Not that that's an issue or anything, but everyone's used to it. The kids actually cop more at school. The kids aren't very nice about it. But what I do is I just point out to them, I just get them to get the internet and not promoting vegetarian, but I just go type in the 10 smartest people in the world, and we always find at least five or seven of them are vegetarians or people like Newton and Einstein and Tesla and Edison, Leonardo da Vinci. And you get it, and they're all the heads of major movements like all the electrical and all of the physics, and you kind of go, oh, why are they vegetarians? And I just go, we're on this side. Matt Groening, Simpsons, Seinfeld. It's not a very hard race to pick out the people at the top of the pile. For some reason, they just end up being vegetarian.
No, Seinfeld
And we
isn't,
haven't even
but that's
gone to
okay.
Indian culture with Buddha and Krishna and
Mm,
everyone, all
yeah.
vegetarian. But the thing is that um,
Anyway, quarrel,
quarrel
quarrel.
and hypocrisy, and something about that is that it's really common, but it has been throughout history too.
Yeah.
But it's sure is intensifying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like the one we posted about the naturopathic group last week, like this massive divide about what's going on with kids who are on the spectrum now, and like that is just, it's the most bizarre conversation that I've seen in the naturopathic world because it's almost like saying, no, 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 toxins aren't part of the equation. And for 30 years, like I,
Although,
I assumed it was, especially in my world, toxins being an equation has always been part of the research and the studies and everything. So it's very interesting
so
having that.
what we were talking about the other day, we were talking about there was somebody talking online about
In a naturopathic group.
in a naturopathic group about what they
Oh,
did with gender.
the language.
They had gender affirming care in the past, and now neurodiverse people,
Neuro-affirming language.
neuro affirming care. And so,
but once again, it's saying there is no cause of this. This is in your genes, so therefore I am the way I am, and you must adjust your life to do with it. That's what it's about. That's what they're talking about in this group.
It's a little bit more subtle than that.
No, it wasn't very subtle. I read hundreds of comments.
The difficulty comes with it is that we're dealing with disorders that are highly dysregulated emotionally and mentally sometimes.
Yep.
Right. So if you're a parent, it's okay to say that, and I agree with part of this, because basically people with neurodiverse difficulties have got a different type of brain essentially to the normies, and it's on a spectrum. Except the thing is that if you just say that that's another type of normal, you're kind of saying that you don't need to do anything to regulate it.
Yeah.
And except the fact is that I've got a kid with ADHD, and actually it is very dysregulated emotionally and behaviourally.
Yeah.
And those things actually do need to be brought into a line where people are going to be at least following the law.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Because the problem is, imagine getting to a spot where in order to get a job, you have to say where on the neurospicy thing you are. And imagine then as an employer saying, well, if you've got depression and autism and ASD and ADHD, I'm not hiring you. Why would I hire you? And this is the thing about putting things into this neuro-affirming language, is that it's going to then be in your record, and therefore it might have to be the sort of thing that you have to tick a box.
But it's in your record.
You require a lot of support.
No, but if you get diagnosis, it's in your record. It's like it's there. And so...
Yeah, but it's not there for an employer.
But what's that? No, but what they're talking about is this affirmation thing, which says that basically there's not a problem. Because what they don't like in it, they don't like the fact that they've got disorder on the end of them.
Right.
Right. And when you go through, there's a lot of other things. So you've got autism spectrum disorder. They don't like that part.
Yeah.
But that's semantics, because it is because if we're in a society, we make laws, we make all sorts of things based on basically what a reasonable person would do in law, right? And if something that where we're neurodiverse makes us less reasonable,
yeah,
there is cause to have some type of intervention to bring both the kids and the parents up to a stage where they can manage in a way that these kids don't get in trouble as an adult by being told, oh, you're okay, there's nothing for you to change. But then when you get out there, the type of things...
Out in the real world, yeah.
Out in the real world, the type of things that I know a lot more about ADHD that they'll experience is like they estimate that 40% of the addicted population have got ADHD.
Yeah.
Like when they look at the studies and they find that a large percent of the prison population has ADHD. So it is something that does need some type of help so that the kids, when they become adults, don't get in trouble. Because if you tell somebody they're good all the time and they're actually insufficient,
yeah,
I don't think that's really helpful.
Yeah. And it is part of that everyone gets a prize mentality there is at school these days.
Right, because they're working on the principle that, like the literature says, by the time if a kid with ADHD, by the time they're 10, they're going to be made to pay attention or be corrected 20,000 times more than the average normie kid.
Yeah.
Right. And because of that, that's a big burden on both the child and the family, because the kids feel bullied, and they often, because that's what it appears like. But the fact is that at least my kid, I'll talk for myself, he's actually really quite distracted and hard to get him to focus on anything. And they have to go to school, they still have to do that.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, you don't have to focus, because otherwise they won't learn anything.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not necessarily good in a job. Like, like a lot of kids these days are going to have to find their own employment so that they can do what they want in their day, so that they can manage their emotional gear, because they've been told their whole lives there's nothing wrong with them.
Well, that could be the thing, and the difficulty. Like, for example, if you look in the like with ADHD and also things like OCD, if you look in the literature, they've got things like they've got some sexual differences in the
Right.
adult population, right? So that means that, and you need to look up the studies because they're quite strange differences.
Yeah.
Because someone with ADHD is distracted. If you think about how that would transfer into that, or some of the other ones, you can look it up yourself, but autoerotic. And so how do you that's when they're adults, except when they're going through adolescence, what will that look like?
Yeah.
And it means that recently I knew a couple of kids who were caught looking at porno at school,
Yeah.
and they were passing it, and they were the kids with ADHD. And so, to a certain extent, that population is more vulnerable to suggestion because they're more, and so suggestion online can be a real problem. And so, more vulnerable to suggestion, distraction, and also if they have had that bullying, they might be looking for more intense behaviours and other stimulus than other kids. And so, you do want to keep an eye on them because I think they're more vulnerable to um, online behaviour that makes them into a victim.
Yeah. Right.
And so, if you don't be aware of their difference, you could get into trouble as a parent
Absolutely.
with them online and you don't know what they're doing. Suddenly this is happening.
With kids like that, they're not necessarily, because obviously off on a tangent as we do. With kids who are getting bullied, all day at school with these sort of things.
Well,
Do you? Yeah.
they're not really getting bullied. It's the same thing as if you're a parent. So you've had two other kids, all these strategies work, and suddenly the ADHD kid, they don't work.
Right.
Right. And so you do have a kid that's distracted, hard to get to do any work. And it's a bit like that'll happen at school too.
Yeah.
So they don't get into trouble because they get into trouble because they're compared to the normal kids, they're
Yeah.
more disruptive, they can't keep still, there's all these things. So they're constantly brought to attention. And so they end up getting sick of authorities, including their parents, because they're just sick of it, because they see the other kids, their siblings, not getting that attention, because the other siblings don't go all this or blurt out all the time.
Yeah.
Or withdraw like some do. Yeah, I mean, because the symptoms are quite diverse in how they manifest, especially in boys and girls, they manifest quite differently.
Yeah. Anyway, it's yeah. I sort of think the world is a bit crazy at the moment. We all need to be doing self-soothing, self-grounding, self-love.
Well, with the quarrel hypocrisy, what happens with this? Like, I don't know. Like, I saw part of a discussion, and I kind of think, how does somebody who's suddenly appoints themselves to be the arbitrator of that in a group of, I think the group had like 10,000 people in it.
Yeah, 8.5.
And you kind of look and you go, but somebody's appointed themselves, and we've seen this happen before in other things, and next minute people are being accused of things for not using the correct thing that's suddenly new.
Yeah.
Like I've just studied counselling recently, and I didn't hear any of that.
Yeah.
And so therefore this is a new thing, and the new thing comes about from research, which often has a really good premise. Except the problem is implementing it in this way, where you tell people who've been practicing for 20, 30 years that they're wrong, when the research is brand new and hasn't entered into society at all. And we saw that in some of the other types of affirming care.
Yeah.
Where everybody got put off, and there was people were quarrelling, they were fighting, and there was hypocrisy because it wasn't really getting a very good outcome.
Yeah.
Because we saw what happened on the internet, and of course I support all types of affirming care as a counsellor because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And I also don't really have an opinion on many things because if I do, I can't counsel. So as a complementary therapist, I don't take fire at any other types of therapists on a rule unless I think there's a real problem.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can't maintain that even balance and accept everyone for who they are. And except the problem is there's the way things go like this where people really pipe up about something and no one even knows what they're talking about yet.
Yeah, that's right.
It's come
it
out
did
of a
feel a
conference
bit like that.
somebody went to, or because I know there's an autism conference on in Perth at the moment. I'm not sure if it's just gone or if it's just coming. So who knows? Something might have come out of that.
Be interesting to see where the energy was spent at the conference. Because It depends. It depends where funding is coming from and all sorts of things, doesn't it?
Well, that was
as
an
to where
autism and the thing with autism different from ADHD is you do get government funding. It's an NDS supported thing, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas ADHD is all parent funded. So they're entirely different classifications of that, unless you get it and then you get school funding as well.
Right.
For both.
Right. Anyway, well, I just want to finish up with a joke. Why did the quarrelsome hypocrite bring a ladder to the argument?
Yeah.
Because he wanted to take the higher ground.
Did you make that up?
No, why did the quarrelsome hypocrite become a lawyer?
Oh, no.
Because arguing both sides is their specialty. And charging for both is just a bonus.
How did you get that? All right.
Yeah, well, got a joke up your sleeve? No. Anyway, so yeah, so I think I think it really is a time on the planet for a lot of self-love, self-care. David had a session on the AO Hub with the PEMF mat this morning. So nice. Yeah, so just going to try to reintegrate those brain pathways that still aren't quite up and running since the heart attacks. If anyone here has had a near-death experience, we'd love to sort of hear about it because, certainly that's part of what's in David's brain.
Oh, that's exciting.
How many minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years do I have left? Let's make it longer and longer. Unless you don't want to be here, in which case do what you want.
Yeah, well,
Depression's a great way out.
I won't make those.
Lucky we don't have the MAID system here in Australia like they do in Canada.
Hey, you told me not to make those jokes. I don't get it started.
Well, I don't mind if I'm making the jokes about me. But yes, it's when it's thrust upon us by governments that I don't like these sort of shenanigans.
Well, the quarrel and hypocrisy is definitely in the government, but
sure
it's in other places as
well. My gosh. And for those of you overseas, we're in the middle of a 6-week, fight, over our politics. So it's all very boring at the moment because they're both lying.
Voting through weekend?
Next weekend.
Cool, we get to vote informal again. I've got a little message I can
We've got a whole bunch of freedom people we can vote this time, people that, so if you guys want to have all your jabs next time when they force you to again and they threaten to steal your home and your income again, then just vote, I
didn't have any jabs.
Well, your wife did. So, yeah, to keep the income coming in somehow, which is awful for anyone to be put in that position.
And that's quarrel and hypocrisy once again.
Absolutely. And this is why you have to vote the freedom parties.
Well, I'm not a voter, and people are welcome to do whatever they want.
Cool. See you all later. Bye.